Okay. Amateur radio in space. I think that's about satellites.
I think that sounds like a Bug Balloons TV show.
Pico balloons, yeah. Actually, that's in there too. Oh, Greg,
Space POTA.
have you been keeping up with the Pico balloon from
China?
what's his name?
It's going around it.
Well, I hadn't checked for a few days. They lost contact. They don't know if it's still up, but it was 71 days when they lost contact. So it's like 4 trips around at least. But he talked about another one that's still up, been up for 371 days.
There was one that they lost contact and they got it back.
Yeah. Well,
So maybe a charge.
he did, that happened to his at least once before, and it was gone for, but I think it was being blocked because it was over the stand countries. Okay. Amateur satellites. There's an organization called AMSAT. So the people that are really into this all belong to AMSAT. Michael, is Kevin just a member or is he some deal in AMSAT? I know he's big on it.
I don't know whether he's an officer or anything. He might be like, you know, a Southern Region section member or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, it would have been nice to get him here to do a demo.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that you can find out where these are, okay, is to look at some of the sources for the Keplerian elements. Now, the ARL puts it out like every day, but there's other sites that update it several times a day. And it's a list of essentially all the satellites, both man-made or artificial satellites and other non-man-made stuff. And it lists all the orbital parameters, basically. Delay and perigee and location and all that kind of stuff. And you can use that in some of these programs to actually track specific satellites. Here's just a short, actually the first couple lines of what is in the ARL one. And they start off giving you the key, and then all the satellites like A007, these 2 lines, which you can decode by looking at this and figure, you know.
What the hell is it saying? Nothing.
What's what?
Doesn't say anything.
Well, it tells you where it is, that epic. It gives you the epic time, which is time since the epic.
Since the beginning.
Huh?
Since the beginning.
Yeah, but it's not like the beginning of time. It's
Right.
whatever that epic is. And usually it's like, I think they do it in minutes or seconds or something from, I used to know this.
Brightest section.
No, it's like year 2000 or something like that. It's some fixed time, and then it's a delta time from that. It gives you inclination and all those good things. Here's the International Space Station. I'm seeing you're impressed.
Very interesting.
Okay, so what are the Keplerian elements?
I just
Hey,
I just have an app that looks.
I have one coming up. Okay, so most of the amateur satellites are LEOs, or low Earth orbit. in order to make a contact, obviously you've got to figure out where they're at and you can track them. Some of these programs that use the Keplerian elements and will predict the path will actually generate outputs to control an antenna. If you've got an antenna that you can do azimuth and elevation. And I guess I never thought of it before this, but most of the satellites tend to go like north-south or south-north as they kind of rotate around the Earth, which is why you see them on the map and you see that big like sine wave and it keeps shifting around. So they defined a descending path when it goes north to south and an ascending path when it goes south to north.
All the satellites do that unless they're in the total equatorial.
Yeah, but
They're
I think the only equatorial are basically the geostationary, right?
normally, yeah.
I think because it takes more energy to put them in that orbit.
Yeah, they're up 22,000 miles or less.
So what's the direction of an ascending pass for an amateur satellite? South to north. We got geostationary, and I guess QO 100 is the amateur geostationary. So have you ever tried to contact GO 100?
Just point at 100.
Okay, is that where it is?
That's where it is.
Oh, okay.
They're measured by latitude. Is that longitude? Latitude.
What type of satellite appears to stay in one position in the sky? Geostationary. Let's see. Oh, the satellite modes. They use a 2-letter uplink downlink convention. And they use U for UHF and V for VHF. So if a satellite's mode is UV, it means it's using UHF for uplink and VHF for downlink. The other one would be a VU, which would be VHF uplink and UHF downlink. So what is meant by the term mode as applied to an amateur radio satellite? Bravo. What do the letters in a satellite's mode designator specify?
Up and down.
Yeah, Delta.
Yeah, this was just things showing where the L band and the S band are in relation to all the other stuff. So it's up here in the super high frequency range. And there's all those others I used to always hear about, you know, the K band and X band and KU band, all those good things. But basically, amateur satellites are using the L band and S band at 23 and 13 centimeters.
1 or 2 gig. 1 or 2 gig.
What do the terms L band and S band specify regarding satellite communications?
Alpha.
Yeah.
23 and 13.
Okay. Most of the satellites, and this was new to me, act as repeaters, but there's some that have linear transponders. And the transponders can handle, I guess, essentially all the modes just about over a wide band of frequencies. And there's two types. There's just a normal linear transponder or an inverting linear transponder. And they do a frequency shift basically, and it inverts the signals on the inverting transponder. So they're sending out when they do it in the mixer, you get a sum and difference of the frequencies. So they're sending out the difference as opposed to the sum, which makes it a lower frequency. And that also, just like on sidebands, inverts it. Let's see. Reverses the signal position. Oh, and it affects the Doppler shift. Because you're doing the sum and differences, so it's shifting them in different directions. So, it'll either make the Doppler shift, I guess, more or less.
They say it makes it less.
If it's inverting.
Yes,
So which of the following occurs when a satellite is using an inverting linear transponder?
Oh,
I think it's all.
wait a minute, could you go back a second?
Sure.
So it says Doppler shift is reduced. I thought it was just in the opposite direction.
But remember, it says an inverting linear transponder.
Yes.
So on the inverting one, it's reduced. On the non-inverting one, it would be increased.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding of it.
yeah, if something's coming towards you, it appears higher frequency. So when it's leaving you, it's a lower frequency.
Right.
So they just
Gotcha.
reverse it.
What's the purpose of having an inverting transponder?
Somebody thought of it.
I mean, well, there's got to be some reason why you do that, as opposed to just always being a
You would
non-inverting.
have to have your radio tracking frequency to be different. This way could be the same amount, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean, for somebody to actually build different types, there's got to be some reason why one is better or for a different purpose.
I don't know.
All right. How is the signal inverted by an inverting linear transponder?
Oh, it goes through the mixer.
Yes. And you get sum and difference depending on whether it's inverting or non-inverting.
Right.
And if it's a repeater, it just repeats on a different frequency. Right?
If it's coming towards you, frequency gets picked up. Your voice, say, would get squeaky. If you continue sending it back at the same thing, it would be double squeaky.
Yeah, but I was talking about the difference between a repeater and a transponder. In the repeater, it just repeats on a different frequency, an offset frequency.
Offset, but
Yeah, that's
still,
what the UV.
your voice,
Uplink is one.
your voice, just say you're using it, AM. Right, you're going up 1,000 hertz signal, when it's coming towards you is now 2,000.
That's
Because
pretty
it's coming
fast.
real fast. You know, it's going pretty fast. So now, when it sends back to you, this 2,000 hertz signal, it now becomes 4,000 hertz. Or 3,000 hertz. So they subtract, like going to reverse, it subtracts 1,000.
Okay.
That's It's the only way I can think of it.
All right. Which of the following types of signals can be relayed through a linear transponder?
Oh, it is. Oh,
Oh. I guess that's, most repeaters only work in one
So-
mode, right?
So the linear
think so.
transponder, is that where they're talking? I just remember I watched some amateur satellite contacts and they said that on the, I guess it's the linear transponder, you can have a group of signals in that bandwidth.
Right.
And, but he said on the digital, it's only the high power one. Cause it's only gonna get one signal and it's gonna be whoever's the strongest.
Okay. I believe that.
So the linear would be talking about the analog satellite. Cause it's not. The
Well,
satellite's
right,
either gonna be
'cause-
analog.
Because it's,
satellite, or-
the key word is linear.
Yeah.
But there's also this effect they're talking about because it has a fixed amount of power on its transmitter. And so the higher your signal, higher power your signal is, okay, the less power is available for other signals. So you can kind of swamp it. Uh,
cell phone towers, for instance, using the same principle. If you're close to it, it works just, it always puts out the same amount of power. Right? Your phone reacts to the how power. You have a real strong signal coming in, it goes out with a very weak signal. You have less power used. Because they measure the link, it's, I don't know, 140 dB loss between here and there.
So
If they're receiving
normalizes
100
all the
signals.
signals.
They're receiving 100 and they only have to put out 40. If they're receiving 40, they'd have to put out 100 to match it.
So it normalizes.
It normalizes everybody's signal. Maybe it works,
well, in this case, you
it's
just,
the reverse.
you get a piece of the pie, and if you transmit a bigger piece, then everybody else gets a smaller piece. Because it can only output so many watts.
Yeah, it's a fixed output.
Right. It doesn't have a plug in the wall to get
Right.
more power. Why should effective radiated power to a satellite that uses a linear transponder be limited? Bravo. I think that holds true for a repeater satellite also. I know it holds true for repeaters.
Yeah.
You can,
Repeaters always go out with the same power. On Earth. Our repeaters. We don't vary the power in our repeaters.
I'm trying to remember because there's a question about that on the general. Can't remember if it's talking satellite repeaters or regular repeaters, but it's the same principle where there's a fixed amount of power.
I don't know.
And it was a confusing one at the time. Because I don't know much about satellites. Okay, store and forward. So in some of the satellites, you can actually do a store and forward where you send a digital message. And I assume this is only applies to digital mode satellites. Where you send a packet, it can store it, and another station sometime in the future can retrieve that packet. And they call it store and forward. Because I think you actually have to request the packet. I don't think it knows when to send it to somebody else. So it stores it for some, and I would assume that after a certain period of time, it would get rid of it, because there's limited storage. Which of the following techniques is normally used by LEO satellites, digital satellites, to relay messages around the world? What's the purpose of digital store and forward functions on an amateur radio satellite?
Charlie?
Charlie. Okay, satellites rotate. That causes fading effects as the antenna rotates away from you and towards you. It also can change the polarization depending on how the satellite is spinning. So it can go from vertical to horizontal and back, which effectively makes it look like it's circularly polarized. How Faraday got into this, I never had a chance to look up why they called this Faraday rotation. Because I didn't remember him doing anything with polarization. Maybe they just thought he needed to be named for something else. It's also called spin fading. So that's why satellite antennas are usually set up so they can do a circularly polarized, or they're cross polarized, horizontal, vertical.
How do you ask Greg about that?
Okay.
He designs antennas for satellites.
What type of antenna can be used to minimize the effects of spin modulation and Faraday rotation? How many Bravos we got?
Yeah.